Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another News Fist. Tonight, we have more from the World Economic Forum that is nearly wrapped up for the year. Yes, there have been so many crazy clips out of this year's WEF. I thought I would start breaking them down by subject. And tonight, it's the climate crisis. Yes, the cool thing you've all heard about. It's going to kill us all. We're all going to drown and burn and freeze simultaneously. It's going to be a sort of cold barbecue of horrors. It's going to be, going to be kind of microwaved on the inside and cold on the outside, and then like sort of crispy and charred. It'll be like the worst barbecue you've ever been to, except it'll all be underwater, and it'll all be happening to you all at the same time in about 2 more weeks, 2 more years, 10 more years. They don't know exactly, but all they do know is that you have to hand immense amounts of power, money, and control to this unelected group of technocrats in order to stop the terrible thing happening. Oh my God, aren't you afraid, bros? I am totally afraid. Obviously, it's a poly crisis, which is a bit like a poly drug user, except it's someone using a poly of crises to fuck everyone over. Yeah, it's pretty freaking weird. We have seen some crazy stuff. We're going to start off with Antonio Gutierrez, the head of the UN Secretary General, I believe, basically sort of like leaning us into the horrors of the climate crisis. Let's watch.
We are flirting with climate disaster. Every week brings a new climate horror story. Greenhouse gas emissions are at record levels and growing.
Oh yes, we're flirting with the climate disaster. Yes, the climate disaster is across the room at a party looking a bit drunk in a kind of, sexy strapless dress. You're looking over at her. She's looking over at you. You're thinking, hey baby, want to come back to my place tonight and create some climate catastrophe? Want to see my glaciers melt? Want to get some warming up inside yourself? It'll be an apocalypto of a good time.
The commitment to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees is nearly going up in smoke. Without further action, we are headed to a 2.8 degree increase, and the consequences, as we all know, would be devastating.
Oh no, 2.8 degrees. That's terribly precise. It's amazing what they can predict about the future. And of course, as everybody knows, everybody who isn't some kind of crazy right-wing conspiracy theorist, this is absolutely 100% true. They can absolutely predict the weather, bros. Everybody knows that. They've got models. The scientists agree. Experts have said. Sources have been cited. They know what they're talking about. They're talking against a blue background. This is the head of the United Nations, for Christ's sake. He's not just a man. He's like Fauci, but sort of climate. He is like the high priest of the climate. Well, possibly that's Al Gore, but he definitely knows what he's talking about, and thus when he decides to predict the future, you can absolutely bank that it's going to happen.
Several parts of our planet would be uninhabitable, and for many it will mean a death sentence. But this is not a surprise. The science has been clear for decades. And I'm not talking only about UN scientists. I'm talking even about fossil fuel scientists.
Oh yes, I'm not just talking about UN scientists, I'm also talking about fossil fuel scientists. Really? You mean except for the scientists that don't agree with you? Well, obviously they're not really scientists. Everybody knows that you just change the definition of what is a scientist to include only people who agree with you, and boom! It's the magic way to trusting the science. Oh, I can't believe it. Parts of the world will be uninhabitable, because everybody knows that all of the world is inhabitable at the moment. There are people living under the sea. There's people living in the middle of the Sahara Desert. There's people living in, everywhere. Like, parts of the world will become uninhabitable. Yeah, that's kind of how things go, actually. You know, stuff ebbs and flows, places become inhabitable and uninhabitable. I mean, look at London, for example, right? That entire city is becoming uninhabitable, but not through climate change, through man-made meddling. You know, perhaps if they just left it alone, you know, and sort of didn't have such high immigration levels, London would be more habitable. But, you know, them's the breaks, bros. Them's the breaks. I guess you better give them a whole bunch of money. Am I right?
We learned last week that certain fossil fuel producers were fully aware in the 70s that their core product was making our planet. And just like the tobacco industry, they rode roughshod over their own science.
So I'd just like to point out here, right? Back in the 70s, everyone thought we were going into a new ice age, right? This is extremely well documented. So on the cover of Time magazine, everyone was like, oh my God, we're going to freeze. So therefore, right, the idea that the fossil fuel companies like thought, oh, you know, fossil fuels are going to make the world warmer is not like really such a long stretch. I'm actually surprised some of the fossil fuel companies haven't come out and said, oh yes, burning fossil fuels is going to make everything cooler. I don't know. I mean, the predictions have changed so much. I mean, Al Gore, of course, being the classic example. We'll have more of him later in this episode, famously predicting there would be absolutely no ice left in the Arctic by, 2010 or something like that, and then he revised it to 2014, and then he just really stopped talking about it because the ice caps kept getting bigger. But, you know, we don't talk about that. We just cherry pick the data that we want, and the stuff that doesn't agree with us, we just let go by the wayside.
Some in big oil peddled the big lie. And like the tobacco industry, those responsible must be held to account. Today, fossil fuel producers and their enablers are still racing to expand production, knowing full well that this business model is inconsistent with human survival. Now, this insanity belongs in science fiction, yet we know the ecosystem meltdown is cold, hard, scientific fact.
Ah, yes. I always knew there was something sinister about the banning of tobacco, and now we see it, right? Basically, the United Nations, the WHO, decided to, you know, outlaw tobacco everywhere. They haven't quite managed to do it yet, but it's on the way, bros. New Zealand has just announced that anyone under 18 at the moment will no longer be able to buy tobacco in perpetuity, and now we see this entire thing being played out again. Because we did it with tobacco, because that was hurting people, we can now do it for climate change and oil. Not for vaccines, though. That's completely different. Those things are totally safe and effective. I know because the UK Labour Health Secretary came out yesterday and said it fully 5 times.
Saying the vaccine's safe and effective.
Well, I'm convinced. Next up, we have more of Senor Gutierrez talking about how they're going to deal with this problem and the inevitable backlash from the people that are affected by it. Have a guess how he's going to frame this, bros. He's going to say that governments should listen to the democratic mandate of their people, right? They're just going to say they should hold a referendum and respect the opinion of the people. No, of course not. He's going to say that screw the people, we've got an agenda to push.
Politicians need to understand, and sometimes we are faced with this kind of challenges. It is better to take today decisions that will eventually be not popular, but it will be essential to be able to shape the public opinion itself.
Now, this is very, very interesting what he said. It's essential to take decisions now that will be unpopular in the future. Why would that be? They're not unpopular now. They'll be unpopular in the future when the effects of those decisions manifest themselves in order to shape the narrative. That sounds sinister as hell. I thought they believed in democracy, bros. Of course, I haven't gotten the updated new definition of what democracy is, clearly. And as per usual, we have the usual douchebags coming out and saying, oh, it's a catastrophe, it's a global catastrophe. This is a very, very weird clip. I've got to say, it looks like a weird sort of game show or some kind of like corporate meeting you'd find like off a highway in some suburb somewhere. The sort of looks on these people's faces are really, really quite creepy. I can't figure out which is more disturbing, what they're saying or the delivery. Let's watch. Oh, and I don't know who these people are. I don't care. They're not anyone important. They're just sort of, WEF talking heads, really. And so they can be disregarded.
Scientifically, this is not a climate crisis. We are now facing something deeper. Mass extinction, air pollution, undermining ecosystem functions, really putting humanity's future at risk. This is a planetary crisis.
Oh my God, we're all going to die. I mean, we're always all going to die. I mean, they're not telling anyone to have children. So what exactly is my motivation here? Oh, I have to come together and do all this stuff for the good of humanity, which basically hates me for being a cis white man. Okay, I'll get right on changing everything about my life in order to please our new global technocratic overlords. I can't wait. The feeling of, superiority and just goodness that flows through me as I start to eat the soy on the way to eating the bugs, curbing my white privilege, becoming a male feminist and just, completely changing who I am. I just can't wait. I'm starting today, bros. I'm making a commitment. I'm going to be accountable. I'm going to, study a course on neo-Marxism and checking my privilege. Oh, it will be glorious.
This is a safety crisis, but above all, it is also a justice crisis.
This is a safety crisis and a justice crisis. Oh my freaking God. The way these people talk, Lord Saints preserve us from these idiots.
Many areas in the world are uninhabitable. This uninhabitable zone is increasing. If we continue with our greenhouse gas emissions, then by 2070, as many as 3 billion people will live in uninhabitable zones.
Wait. Well, if the zones are uninhabitable, how will 3 billion people live in them? Am I missing something here? Look, your predictions have been crap so far. And have you ever considered, taking the literally probably trillions of dollars that you're using to try and fuck everyone over and, inventing new technology to mitigate things like desertification, greater irrigation, desalination plants, like any of that kind of stuff? Nah, of course not. Because the goal is really depopulation. They need less people. Or possibly they're just going to redistribute 3 billion people into, I guess, the nicer parts of the world, which I basically assume will not include places like Davos. They can't have all the migrants shitting up the place after all. Oh no, you will be forced to live among the migrants, oh peasant, for the good of the world, because of your historical sin of contributing to the climate. White countries especially, England especially because of the Industrial Revolution. I can't wait. It will be a glorious future. Lastly, of course, we have possibly the most unhinged rant that I have seen so far from the WEF. Yes, Al Gore has always been a bit sort of differenty in the brain, but this year he seems to have outdone himself. Just going off, bros. Check this out. My God.
We're going to bring these emissions down. And just to put the science in a slightly different context, people are familiar with that thin blue line that the astronauts bring back in their pictures from space. That's the part of the atmosphere that has oxygen, the troposphere, and it's only 5 to 7 kilometers thick. That's what we're using as an open sewer. If you could drive a car straight up in the air at interstate highway speeds, you'd get to the top of that blue line in 5 minutes.
Oh yes, and if I was Superman and could shoot fire out of my asshole, I would also be in the troposphere in 5 minutes. What the fuck is wrong with this guy using this as an atmosphere, as an open sewer? You mean like the way volcanoes work, for example, or the way the sea dumps, gas into the atmosphere? Oh my God, this is just... It's so incredibly manipulative. Oh yes, the atmosphere is an open sewer, bros. Might I also add that Mr. Gore does not seem to be able to do basic math, because 5 to 7 kilometers, right, times by the surface area of the Earth is a huge amount, right? 5 to 7 kilometers is actually quite large for an atmosphere, and gravity makes it all stick down. This is ridiculous. But of course, they have to push, the Earth it's so fragile. We really need a world technocratic government to take care of it. You people, you plebs can't, of course, be trusted to take care of it by yourself now, can you?
And all the greenhouse gas pollution would be below you. We're still putting 162 million tons into it every single day. And the accumulated amount is now trapping as much extra heat as would be released by 600,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every single day on the Earth. That's what's boiling the oceans, creating these atmospheric rivers and the rain bombs, and sucking the moisture out of the land, and creating the droughts, and melting the ice, and raising the sea level, and causing these waves of climate refugees predicted to reach 1 billion in this century.
Jesus Christ, Al. Calm down, mate. I think he needs a Xanax and a lie down, ladies and gentlemen. He's like, just the rain bombs and the heat from 6 billion Hiroshima bombs. I mean, like, you know what the solar output of the sun in 1 second is equal to like trillions and trillions of Hiroshima bombs? Oh my freaking God. It's so manipulative. Why mention Hiroshima? Well, because everyone will think of the big, scary image of the mushroom cloud in the back of their heads, and their animal brains will light up, and it'll be like, oh my God, billions of like clouds. Oh no, billions of bombs. Oh no, what are we going to do? We must panic. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Look at the xenophobia and political authoritarian trends that have come from just a few million refugees. What about 1 billion? We would lose our capacity for self-governance on this world. We have to act. So in answer to your question, I would say we have to have a sense of urgency much greater than we have yet had, and we need to make some changes.
I see. Because of the refugee crisis, we may lose our capacity for self-governance. And the solution to this is to give up our self-governance to the World Economic Forum. What a brilliant rhetorical strategy that is. In order to fucking stop ourselves from losing self-governance, we must lose self-governance. Why am I detecting a theme here? Always, 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 it is you cannot govern yourselves. Countries cannot govern themselves. We need a world government. Well, I disagree, Mr. Gore. I think you should go and have a Xanax, maybe 2, and a lie down, and possibly, again, consider just doing a bit less. I think possibly the strain is getting to him. He's probably got a bit of a busy schedule. Perhaps his doctor could recommend him, a couple of years of rest at like a nice asylum somewhere in the country where he would stop making these horrifying apocalyptic predictions and just go and have a lie down. We can but hope. I will be bringing you more crazy stuff from the WEF. We've got, they've been talking about the COVIDs and digital IDs, and oh my God, it's been a massive shit show. The last couple of days have been much more entertaining than the first one. So I will fill you all in. Please join us again in a couple of days. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I will see you in a couple of days. Good night.